Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, President Trump saying he would designate Antifa a domestic terrorist organization. The administration condemning political violence in the wake of the assassination of conservative thought leader Charlie Kirk. Mariotsu at the White House. Authorities say the man suspected of killing Kirk told another person in a text message that he would commit the act. The investigators also say DNA evidence links back to the suspect. Jack Bradley has the latest. UCLA responds after placing an employee on leave following social media posts in which he appeared to celebrate the death of Kirk. Christina Corona reports. A replica of D.C. crime crackdown. President Trump now deploying the National Guard to Memphis, which cities he says will be next, and what's behind a new U.S. strike on a Venezuelan drug boat. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has endorsed Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani in the New York City mayoral race. What President Trump says about her announcement.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. The White House doubles down on condemning political violence after the fatal shooting of conservative thought leader Charlie Kirk. We go now live to NTD's Mariotsu at the White House. Good evening, Mari. In the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, there are those celebrating his death, claiming that Charlie Kirk propagated hateful rhetoric. Conversely, the White House is saying it's these erroneous claims that led to political violence, including the assassination. How is the administration planning to address this?
Good evening to you too, Tiff. Yes, the White House is doubling down today on condemning all forms of political violence and radicalization in the wake of Kirk's assassination. And President Trump tonight, just moments ago, is saying that designating Antifa a domestic terrorist organization is something that he would do. Take a look.
Antifa is terrible.
Are there other groups that you can pick up?
There are other groups, yeah, there are other groups. We have some pretty radical groups, and they got away with murder. And also, I've been speaking to the Attorney General about bringing RICO against some of the people that you've been reading about that have been putting up millions and millions of dollars for agitation. These aren't protests. These are crimes. You can see they're professional agitators. I had one the other night. I had 4 the other night, all in one group, total phonies. I started to scream when I got into a restaurant. Oh.
Vice President J.D. Vance today is hosting the Charlie Kirk show to honor his friend, and he was joined with other Trump administration officials. And while much of the show honored Kirk's legacy and his life, a large part of it also focused on making sure to prevent something like this from ever happening again. So the Trump administration is saying that they're going to go after the NGO network that foments, facilitates, and engages in violence, with President Trump announcing that these organizations are already under investigation. Take a look.
When you look at the agitators, the American flag burnings all over the place, they're already under major investigation. We wouldn't celebrate if something happened on their side, and we don't. These are sick people.
And Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, condemns what he calls a growing domestic terrorist movement in the U.S. Miller says that people celebrating and cheering Charlie Kirk's assassination is not a fringe phenomenon, but extends to federal workers, bureaucrats, educators, professors, and nurses.
The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence. It is a vast domestic terror movement.
Vice President Vance characterizes this violence as a collection of forces like a pyramid.
Not every member of that pyramid would commit a murder. In fact, over 99%, I'm sure, would not. But by celebrating that murder, many of these people are creating an environment where things like this are inevitably going to happen. We can thank God that most Democrats don't share these attitudes, and I do.
Vance recounts being harassed at Disneyland while with his wife and kids. He also shares the story of a senior White House staffer who had people in his neighborhood hand out leaflets telling people what he looked like and where he lived, encouraging neighbors to harass him just after Kirk's assassination. The vice president says that while these people don't constitute the majority of Americans, he urges Americans to unite in condemnation of the actions and ideas that killed Charlie Kirk.
There is no unity with some someone who lies about what Charlie Kirk said in order to excuse his murder. There is no unity with the people who celebrate Charlie Kirk's assassination. And there is no unity with the people who fund these articles, who pay the salaries of these terrorist sympathizers, who argue that Charlie Kirk, a loving husband and father, deserved a shot to the neck because he spoke words with which they disagree.
Vance and Miller say that they will do their best in the coming months to use all resources at the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, and throughout the government to identify, dismantle, and uproot the terrorist networks that led to Kirk's assassination. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for those updates. And authorities have new details about the man suspected of assassinating Charlie Kirk last week. Officials say they now have DNA evidence and text messages revealing a potential motive for the killer. NTD's Jack Bradley reports from Utah County Jail.
Behind me is where Tyler Robinson, the 22-year-old suspect involved in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, is being held without bail at Utah County Jail. Robinson is the sole suspect in the assassination, which happened last Wednesday in front of a crowd of thousands at Utah Valley University. Investigators have now found text messages in which Robinson allegedly wrote that he has the chance to kill Charlie Kirk and that he would.
His family has collectively told investigators that he subscribed to left-wing ideology, and even more so in these last couple of years. And he had a text message exchange, he the suspect, with another individual, in which he claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for.
DNA evidence may link back to Robinson as well, including a screwdriver that was found on the roof where Robinson allegedly shot Kirk from, and a towel wrapped around the firearm that was abandoned in a nearby wooded area.
The DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody. The father informed us, per interview of him, that he looked at the video that we released that evening and the enhanced photos and identified the suspect.
FBI Director Kash Patel also says that his department is investigating a group chat that Robinson was allegedly a part of on the Discord app, with more individuals that are going to be interviewed. Utah Governor Spencer Cox on Sunday saying the suspect is being uncooperative, but that his transgender roommate boyfriend is cooperating with investigators.
He's not cooperating, but all the people around him are cooperating.
Robinson will make his first court appearance on Tuesday. He faces multiple charges, including aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, and obstruction of justice. If convicted on the aggravated murder charge, he could face the death penalty in the state of Utah. Charlie Kirk's funeral and memorial service will take place on Sunday in Arizona in a stadium that can hold up to 60,000 people. President Trump said that he will be attending. Reporting from Spanish Fork, Utah, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
A vigil in memory of Charlie Kirk is being held tonight at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. The event is nonpartisan and being led by House Speaker Mike Johnson. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson will lead a vigil honoring Charlie Kirk in the Capitol on Monday evening. The memorial is open to members of any political party and will be held in Statuary Hall. According to an advisory, Johnson, House leaders, and other members of Congress are scheduled to speak. This follows a moment of silent prayer led by Johnson on the House floor last week, hours after Kirk was killed, as well as a vigil held at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. on Sunday night. Speakers included Representatives Andy Biggs and Anna Paulina Luna, as well as White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard.
Every soldier lives this fact, this truth. I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death for your right to say it. Charlie lived by this principle.
Gabbard described the first time she accompanied Kirk at one of his college campus events.
And the first 2 or 3 people who had stood in line, they talked about how he positively impacted their lives. But Charlie wasn't there for praise. He would call to the crowd and say, hey, who here disagrees with me? Come to the front of the line. He listened carefully to everyone. Even when others in the crowd booed, whoever was speaking, he told them to be quiet and to let this person speak, to show them respect.
Speaker Mike Johnson also spoke on Sunday night.
Charlie Kirk did so much in his short life that he spurred that on in other people. He inspired it in other people, and that message and that truth will go more boldly now than it did while he was here. It will go forward with power and strength. That's it.
Johnson closed with a prayer.
Father, help us to remember the principles of your word that Charlie worked every day to advance, that we do not return evil for evil, but we overcome evil with good.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
A UCLA employee is now on administrative leave after posts surfaced online where he appeared to celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk. The university responded to the situation. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Social media posts from a UCLA employee have resurfaced following the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The posts included comments celebrating Kirk's death and statements saying, "You can't force people to mourn someone who hated us, no matter how he died." Another read, "It is okay to be happy when someone who hated you and called for your people's death dies, even if they are murdered." The employee holds the position of Director of Race and Equity at UCLA. Corey DeAngelis on X compiled some of the posts, which were primarily shared on Blue Sky. UCLA released a statement on Sunday saying, UCLA has placed a campus employee on immediate leave and has launched an investigation following reports of social media posts regarding the murder of Charlie Kirk. They go on to say, while free expression is a core value of UCLA, violence of any kind, including the celebration of it, is completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Thousands gathered at Huntington Beach Saturday and Sunday to remember Charlie Kirk. Attendees held candles, waved flags, and placed flowers at the site. The vigil, organized by local supporters and Turning Point USA affiliates, included moments of silence, speeches, and songs honoring Kirk's influence on conservative youth activism. Christina Corona, NTD News.
After months of silence, New York Governor Kathy Hochul has endorsed Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani for New York City mayor. Hochul made her public endorsement in a New York Times opinion piece published on Sunday. In the article, she states that she's had frank conversations with Mamdani over the past few months about their disagreements. Hochul said Mamdani agreed to ensure that the New York Police Department has strong leadership. He previously supported defunding the police. Hochul said she and Mamdani will work together to confront possible attempts at federal intervention. Mamdani thanked Hochul in a statement Sunday night. President Trump chimed in on a Truth Social post, calling the endorsement, quote, very bad for New York City, adding that, quote, Washington will be watching the situation very closely. Coming up, Secretary of State Marco Rubio meets with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. Meanwhile, Arab leaders hold an emergency summit after the Israeli strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar. Jason Perry reports. And Rubio provides more information on the Russian drones that entered Polish airspace. Arian Pozdar has what he says about the reason behind the drone incursion. And over 100,000 people gathered on the streets of London over the weekend. They're seeking to raise the issues surrounding mass immigration and what some protesters are calling the erosion of British culture. Malcolm Hudson brings us more from the UK after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Trump announcing the creation of a task force today to address rampant crime in Memphis, Tennessee. He says it'll be a replica of crime-fighting efforts in Washington, D.C., and that it'll employ the full powers of the FBI, ICE, the National Guard, and other agencies.
This team will deploy the full powers of federal law enforcement agencies and enforcement generally to restore public safety and get dangerous career criminals off of our streets. We're going to get them off. In 2024, Memphis had the highest violent crime rate, the highest property crime rate, and the third highest murder rate of any city in the nation.
I've been in office 7 years. I'm tired of crime holding the great city of Memphis back.
Memphis had the nation's highest crime rate per 100,000 people last year, according to FBI data. President Trump says he'll likely deploy the National Guard to Chicago next, and that St. Louis is also on the list. Meanwhile, the president today also announced a U.S. strike on a second Venezuelan boat, saying it was carrying narcotics headed to the U.S. Trump says the strike killed 3 terrorists, adding that it was to stop violent cartels from transporting drugs that can kill Americans. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was in Israel today, where he met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This comes as leaders in the Middle East held an emergency summit to discuss Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio placed a prayer note into a crevice on the Western Wall in Jerusalem on Sunday. Rubio, along with U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee, attended the traditional ceremony before Rubio held talks on Monday with Israel's prime minister.
I want to thank you personally for your unwavering support of Israel's right to defend itself, for standing firmly against those who seek to isolate and demonize our nation. We're engaged in a battle of civilization against barbarism, and the alliance between our nations remains as enduring and unshakable as the stones of the Western Wall we visited yesterday.
And Rubio called for all the hostages to be returned home from the Gaza Strip and added this:
Hamas can no longer continue to exist as an armed element that threatens the peace and security, not just of Israel, but of the world, and that the people of Gaza deserve a better future, one that cannot begin until Hamas is eliminated and until all of the hostages, both living and deceased, are home.
Monday is also the 5-year anniversary of the signing of the Abraham Accords, in which 4 Arab countries normalized diplomatic relations with Israel. The agreement was administered under the Trump administration in 2020. Rubio met with Israeli President Isaac Herzog to mark the occasion.
I must say, Mr. Secretary, that we bless those agreements every day. They brought enormous change to everybody's lives in the Middle East. And these allies that signed the agreement, despite all the storms of the Middle East, have kept these agreements going.
However, Arab leaders in the Middle East held an emergency summit in Qatar and called on countries to review their diplomatic and economic ties with Israel. The emergency Arab summit came just days after Israel reported striking Hamas leaders in Qatar's capital of Doha. The president of Egypt said this about any future agreements.
I say to the Israeli people that what is happening right now hinders the future of peace, threatens your security and the security of the peoples in the region.
Another leader at the summit said he expects the United States to use its influence to stop Israel's behavior. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And Secretary of State Marco Rubio provides more information on the Russian drones that entered Polish airspace. And over the weekend, Russian drones reportedly entered Romanian airspace as well. Both countries are NATO members. NTD's international correspondent, Arian Pozdar, has the latest.
This shouldn't have happened. I don't think anybody's happy about it seeing happen. You saw NATO respond to it appropriately. We don't want to see it happen again.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio condemns a Russian drone incursion into Poland. The drones reportedly penetrated Polish airspace last Wednesday. Poland then shut the drones down, which marked the first time a NATO member is known to have fired shots during the Ukraine war. Rubio now says the investigation into the incident is scheduled to take a few more days.
The question is whether the drones were targeted to go into Poland specifically. If that's the case, that if the evidence leads us there, then obviously that would be a highly escalatory move.
He added that there are other possible reasons for the incursion too, but that the US wants to discuss the situation with allies before drawing a conclusion. And just over the weekend, on Saturday, Russian drones reportedly entered Romanian airspace. The country's defense ministry said 2 F-16 fighter aircraft took off on Saturday to monitor the air situation on the border with Ukraine, following Russian air attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure on the Danube River. Like Poland, Romania is also a member of NATO and the European Union. Moscow says there is no proof that the drone was Russian. Meanwhile, on Sunday, President Trump said Europe has to become stricter with Russia.
Europe is buying oil from Russia. I don't want them to buy oil. And the sanctions that they're putting on are not tough enough. And I'm willing to do sanctions, but they're going to have to toughen up their sanctions commensurate with what I'm doing.
Trump also said he's confident that the presidents of Russia and Ukraine would hold talks soon. But Trump added that he will attend and lead the talks as the two presidents are on bad terms. Meanwhile, Russia on Monday saying the Kremlin remains open to working on solving the conflict through diplomacy. But a spokesperson says Ukraine is hindering the process.
The process is being artificially slowed down by Kyiv. No one wishes to delve into the root causes of the conflict.
But Europe has been accusing Russia of being at fault for slowing down the progress. They say Russia only talks about peace without actually working on it. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Over 100,000 people gathered on the streets of London on Saturday for the Unite the Kingdom March. It sought to raise the issue surrounding mass immigration and what it called the erosion of British culture. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more.
Huge crowds filled the streets of London on Saturday for the Unite the Kingdom rally. The Metropolitan Police said it estimated around 110,000 attendees, while organisers claimed helicopter footage showed 3 million people. It was spearheaded by Tommy Robinson, who is known in Britain for his long-standing campaigning against Britain's so-called grooming gang scandal, in which gangs of predominantly Pakistani heritage men systematically exploited and gang-raped white working-class girls.
You are here because you love your country. You love your children. And we want a better future and a safe future for them.
Robinson has been accused of being far-right, though it's a label he rejects. Elon Musk joined the event in a live interview broadcast on stage. He said Britain is facing an increasingly rapid erosion due to massive uncontrolled immigration, saying the British government has failed to protect innocent people and children, and calling for the dissolution of Parliament and a new election. Immigration has become a dominant issue in the UK, with concerns about what it means for the nation.
I'm 35 years old. In my lifetime I've seen a huge change in my country. It's a country that I don't recognise anymore. It's a country that used to be one that was patriotic, proud. It had confidence in itself on the world stage.
Even in the Bible says, keep the laws of the country that you are in. So if everybody comes here, we should all know this is a Christian foundation, British culture, keep the culture, live by the values.
Police appeared to be taken by surprise by the turnout, describing the rally as too big to fit on the approved route of the march, leading to a confrontation between police and protesters. There were kicks and punches, as well as bottles, flares and other projectiles thrown. Police said 26 officers were injured, while 25 people were arrested. The British government said only a small minority of the demonstrators had conflict with police. The march filled London with Union, St George's, Welsh and Scottish flags, with calls to restore Britain.
You know, people are here together, and it shows that the numbers really do care, and the diversity here. It's not all far right. It's, you know, it's a real mixture, and when people see that and they understand that it's not far right, they'll start to listen.
I think this is exactly what the country needs and exactly what the world needs at the moment. Every country in the world needs to be doing this and celebrating their own country and their own history.
Demonstrators also paid tribute to Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated last week.
I'm so glad all these people are here, because I promise you, the world needs to change, and the death of Charlie Kirk has changed the world forever. It has changed the world forever. We're in the UK and we're thinking about him. The whole world is, and he's making this whole movement known.
Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
Coming up in the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, many are asking, what should we do next? Some Democrats say their party members should tone down the rhetoric against Republicans. And Trevor Loudon, an author and filmmaker who's researched Marxist and terrorist movements for more than 30 years, joins us to dive into the history of political violence and the underlying ideology when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, congressmen on both sides of the aisle have condemned it. But questions remain over what should happen next. Some Democrats have blamed their own party for their attacks on conservative values.
As the world mourns the assassination of Charlie Kirk, questions arise over what needs to happen next. Many Republicans and Democrats have condemned his murder.
Political violence is the enemy of democracy, and we have an obligation on all sides to fight it at every turn. We must condemn it whenever it arises, wherever it arises, including this heinous murder of Charlie Kirk.
Yet many Republicans have blamed Democrats for rhetoric that they say fuels anger in some people, leading them to commit these crimes.
We turn down the rhetoric. We cease with this idea that, policy disputes are somehow an existential threat to democracy or the republic. We stop calling one another names. I mean, calling people Nazis and fascists is not helpful. Look, there are some deranged people in society. And when they see leaders using that kind of language, so often now, increasingly, it spurs them on to action.
And some Democrats agree that the name-calling doesn't help.
When I represent a state like Pennsylvania, that keeps you honest. And you always can't forget that a lot of Americans happen to disagree with you. That does not mean that they are fascists or now they want to shred the Constitution.
When you hear some Democrats saying Trump is acting like an autocrat.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. If you actually compare him to an actual autocrat, that is not just that. Now, last night, for example, people were complaining. They were protesting about, that's the Hitler thing. You just don't ever compare anyone to Hitler and those kinds of extreme things. And now look what happened to Charlie Kirk. I mean, the man was shot. Now we have to turn the temperature down. It's like we can't compare people to these kinds of figures in history. And this is not an autocrat. This is a product of a democratic election. It's like I participated in that. It was safe and it was secure. We lost. And the America people put us in the minority. And now that's democracy. And I revere democracy. I may not like the outcome, but I have to respect that, and I have to find and work through this. And that I do believe that's what's appropriate.
So you don't think that Trump is at all shattering any of the norms of democracy?
I'm saying he's definitely different, but that's what America voted for. Again, I don't agree with many of these things, but that does not make him an autocratic. That does not make someone or compare him to people like Hitler and these other outlandish things.
Can change really happen?
And not only was Charlie assassinated, but a part of our core American principles were also assassinated. And that is that we litigate with words, not weapons. And whether you agreed or disagreed with Charlie Kirk, what he espoused in his mission was actually to do exactly what I'm encouraging all of us to start doing more of, which is to spend time together and show up at events. And don't attack, but listen, learn, educate, and debate. And that is the only way forward. But yes, it's going to take all of us, Laura. And I do speak for, I think, most Democrats. We're just as heartbroken as any reasonable, patriotic American.
Some Democratic members of Congress say it's not just a battle between the parties. There are other factors.
On social media, extremism is rewarded with the most likes and the most follows and the most views and the most small dollar donations. So that again encourages division. Cable news, Fox News, MSNBC, they only have a few million viewers on each, but they say the more extreme messages. But the most important thing, the fourth factor, the most dangerous factor, are our foreign adversaries are using our media waves, using our social media, and using bots and fake accounts, and they are spreading extreme messages on issues that there's division in our country and making them bigger and bigger and bigger.
And joining us now to dive into the history of political violence and the underlying ideology is Trevor Loudon. He's an author, filmmaker, and public speaker. For more than 30 years, Loudon has researched Marxist and terrorist movements, as well as the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. Trevor, as always, thank you so much for joining us. To begin, talk to us about the rise of radical left-wing extremism online. There's been a significant amount of celebration over Charlie Kirk's assassination, and from that, some people have gotten fired. In your view, how did we get to this point?
Well, it's very easy for the left to say, well, we've got to tone down the rhetoric, we've got to, calm down. It hasn't been the conservative movement that's been using extreme rhetoric. It's been the left that has driven this all the time. And now that it's become a political liability for them, now that an extreme left-winger has assassinated somebody, and this is not the first incident. We've had attacks by Antifa on groups on an ice station in Texas. We've had Black Lives Matter, a Chinese aligned organization rampaging through the streets. We've had a young couple gunned down by a former communist in the streets outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., and multiple other attacks. This is coming from the left because the left works with the Chinese and the Iranians and the Venezuelans and the Russians. And all of them want to cause instability in America. All of them want to drive the country into civil war. So they use their bot farms, they use their organizations on the street, their Communist Party USA, their Party for Socialism and Liberty, Party for Liberty and Socialism, their Democratic Socialists of America, their Freedom Road Socialist Organization. They're using these organizations, they're using bots, they're using websites to drive students and young radicals to the left. And at the same time, they're pushing. They get a reaction, and when they get a reaction, they blame it all on the right. But that's the game. That's the game they have played for 100 years now. So I don't really accept the sincerity of some of these Democratic spokesmen. It really rings true because they weren't saying any of these kind of things during Black Lives Matter. It's now because it's embarrassing to them because the show of support for Charlie Kirk is so massive. They know they've overplayed their hand a little bit, so they're backing off. But this is not sincere.
And Trevor, there's a Wall Street Journal editorial from 2007 called No Guardrails, pointing to August of 1968 as the shift when the country began to tip towards the justification of violence. That was when fights broke out in Chicago during the Democratic National Convention involving the anti-Vietnam War movement. What do you make of that timeline? When do you think this shift into justifying violence began?
Well, that was a major part of it, yes, the 60s, because that's when the Chinese and the Soviets were spending a lot of money. And, the Soviets spent more money on the US anti-war movement than they did on supporting North Vietnam. The most of the protests were led by Maoist pro-Chinese students from Students for a Democratic Society and the Progressive Labour Party and other communist groups. So this was all driven from the left, all of it. And so some people reacted to that, but 98% of the violence came from the left. And that's been the recurring pattern in American society. But that was the big shift, in the 60s, but that was because of the Vietnam War and the Soviets were back in the North Vietnamese, the Chinese were back in the North Vietnamese, the Soviets put their money into the American peace movement and the student radicals, and the Chinese ordered their young communists on the street to create mayhem, to sour people on supporting the Vietnam War. That was what it was all designed to do.
To your point, Ron Reichlich talks about that in his book, Disinformation. And to your earlier point, Utah's governor was warning of China and Russia using bots to spread disinformation online after the assassination to heighten divisions in the country. Talk to us about the communist influences we're seeing here and in the past.
Well, we're seeing the radical left. We're seeing Antifa, Democratic Socialists of America, the Palestinian youth movement. We're seeing all these people, the traditional left, working with a lot of the Islamic groups, trying to push a debate to the left. And that's really gone up in scale since the trouble broke out in Israel, since the attack on October 7th. But what you're also seeing is a lot of pro-Russian websites are promoting, trying to tell conservative people, we need a civil war, we need a civil war. They are pushing on the right to get extreme reactions. So it's absolutely right. There are the Russians and others, the Iranians, are promoting a lot of stuff to try and push this country into civil war. And this is what Vladimir Dugin, the Russian philosopher, the Putin's brain, has been saying for some years. He wrote books in the 90s. He's still doing this now. He's doing this right now. we need to push America into a civil war. We need to exacerbate the racial and political differences in America to push the country into civil war. Alexander Dugin, and he has followers in this country, in the American Communist Party, some of the little fascist groups that are here, all trying to push both right and left to more and more and more extreme stances to basically create a civil war. One of the main things they're doing now, this is one of the main Russian operations, they're pushing out the meme that Israel was behind the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It was Israel that did it because they're trying to they've already driven a lot of hatred against Israel in the left and the Democratic Party. Now they're trying to create hatred against Israel in the conservative movement. So you see this coming from all the Russian websites. Israel did it. It was really Israel that killed Charlie Kirk. This is an example of the propaganda aimed to divide us, to split us away from Israel, to divide the US right, to divide left versus right, just to create chaos and anarchy. Russia and China cannot dominate the world unless they drive America into civil war. That's their plan.
And given what you just laid out, what do you see as next in this investigation? How will the FBI investigate possible groups that may be behind the motives and ideology involved in Charlie's assassination?
Look, if the FBI, when the George Floyd riots were going on, the FBI could have arrested about 100 key leaders, Marxists who are leading that movement, and it would have stopped it. When the riots were supposed to start again in Los Angeles. The same communists who did the George Floyd riots were doing the ICE riots in Los Angeles recently. But Trump stepped in, sent in the National Guard, and squashed it. It was supposed to spread all over America, but he squashed it. So it's a combination of tough policing, enforcing the law, but also if the Justice Department and the FBI started about 10 RICO lawsuits investigating the major communist parties and the major Islamic radical groups and the major extremist groups on the white supremacist pro-Russian groups. If there were 10 good RICO lawsuits, would shut this whole thing down. We know who the leaders are. We know how they're doing it. All we are lacking is the political will to actually prosecute and enforce the law. Now, with the murder of Charlie Kirk, hopefully enough Republicans, people around Trump are actually going to take this seriously now, because Kirk will not be the last if this is allowed to continue. There will be several. I've been saying for a year now, I expected political assassinations this year. Sadly, I was correct on the first one. Hopefully there are no more, but unless there are major crackdowns, RICO lawsuits, prosecutions, there absolutely will be more.
Concerning indeed. Trevor Loudon, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Coming up in the NFL, the Bengals could be without quarterback Joe Burrow for quite a while after he was injured yesterday. Dave Martin joins us to discuss. And the 1965 American classic, The Sound of Music, making a comeback at the Kennedy Center. Sam Wong hears from VIP audience members at the red carpet premiere when we come back. And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. A lot going on right now, including you're back. It's been a minute.
Good to be back.
Let's start in the NFL, as yesterday Cincinnati quarterback Joe Burrow left the game against Jacksonville with a toe injury. Have the Bengals updated his condition?
As of about 30 minutes ago anyway, the team has not, but multiple sources are reporting he'll need toe surgery and will miss about 3 months. Now, obviously, that could derail Cincinnati's chances of returning to the playoffs if true. Now, he was injured yesterday while being sacked by Jaguars Eric Armstead. It was hard to see what actually happened on instant replay, except several people fell on him after he went down. He then tried to limp off the field, could not do it, went down again. Now, this was in the second quarter. Burrow did not return. Now, his backup, Jake Browning, filled in admirably, leading them to a comeback win. The Bengals are actually now 2-0. But for Burrow, if he's out for 3 months, that would take us to mid-December. He would miss the majority of the season. It would be a huge loss for the Bengals. Burrow, of course, a 2-time Pro Bowl selection, finished 4th in the MVP in voting last year. So quite a big loss potentially for the Bengals there, and for anyone who has them on their fantasy football team too.
Now, besides Burrow, there are a few more quarterbacks who are nursing injuries.
Yeah. Vikings quarterback J.J. McCarthy, he's also reportedly out with a high ankle sprain, according to ESPN, expected to miss 2 to 4 weeks, they're saying. Now, McCarthy was Minnesota's first-round pick in 2024, missed all of last year already with a knee injury. Vikings coach Kevin O'Connell said McCarthy was very sore after suffering an ankle sprain last night against Atlanta. He was able to stay in the game, though. Now, elsewhere in the league, the Jets are reportedly preparing for the possibility of playing this Sunday without quarterback Justin Fields. Fields was injured in the fourth quarter of their loss against the Bills yesterday. And in Washington, Jaden Daniels reportedly sprained his knee against the Raiders Thursday night. His status for Sunday is reportedly in doubt. Daniels, of course, was the NFL's Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. So quarterback is reportedly a dangerous position right now in the NFL for sure.
Seems like it. Well, moving away from that to basketball news. Last week we reported on this show that NBA star LeBron James had written an op-ed in Chinese state-run media. His representative, though, came out and said that he didn't write it. Do we know exactly what happened here?
You know, I don't think we still completely do yet. We'll just lay it out here and let the viewers here, the viewers here decide. Now, I can say, looking at that article, it was entitled "Basketball is the Bridge Connecting Each Other." It clearly has LeBron James written right underneath the title and right beside the date. That was September 8, which was a week ago today. Now, usually that's, of course, where the author's name is. And if that wasn't clear enough, at the bottom it says the author is a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. So I don't think there was any mistake in reporting on this. Now, James' team, though, after this came out, said he did not write it, but the comments were made in multiple sessions with the media. Now, normally, if that's the case, though, you would write each question followed by each answer. Again, that was not done in the article. Of course, the NBA does have quite a tumultuous relationship with China. I mean, you know, China canceled all the games from being aired over in China in 2020 after that Houston Rockets executive tweeted out "Free Hong Kong" at those anti-democracy protests. And of course, we've had Enes Freedom with his writing "Free Tibet" and "Free China" on his basketball shoes. I think all his Boston Celtics games were then immediately taken off the air over in China. So yeah, it's quite a relationship, but they were trying to. We still have not quite exactly heard what went on with this. We might not ever, though. But the AP originally reported this, and they completely have just deleted that article. So it's quite the story, or deleted story at this point, I guess you could say.
Normally that makes it a story. Well, looking at tonight's sports schedule, we have a number of baseball games on, plus a doubleheader on Monday Night Football. What matchups are standing out to you?
Yeah, you know, in baseball, we've got the leading MVP candidates, really, of both leagues playing on tonight. Now, first, Shohei and the Dodgers host the Phillies. Ohtani really seems like he's poised to win his 4th MVP this year. Now, the Mets, Juan Soto, probably looking at a possible runner-up finish despite his slow start. The Mets still have the day off. In the American League, I would say it's a little closer between 1 and 2. Seattle's Cal Raleigh, Yankees' Aaron Judge. Now, Raleigh has 54 home runs. That's the most ever by a catcher, and that's tied for the most ever by a switch hitter. His average, though, of 244 might cost him with a number of voters, but if he gets to 60, which he has an outside shot at, that would be tough to ignore. Now, Judge, though, despite missing a couple weeks with that flexor sprain in his elbow, has 47 home runs, leads baseball in batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage. I would say if he keeps that up, he should actually win, though. And we've got Monday Night Football. Starts pretty soon here. First game, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, with the Texans hosting the Buccaneers. Then in the nightcap, we've got the Chargers at the Raiders. So 4 NFL teams playing tonight, Tiff. None of them are actually on my fantasy football team or on yours, which unfortunately mopped the floor with my team this week. What was it, 105 to 70 something, I believe it was. Very humbling time for me, of course, Tiff. Being a big NFL fan, you know, She had to play Patrick Mahomes. Let me just say for the audience, this was an auto draft, and the team did not do very well for me, unfortunately. So Tiff has exploited that for sure.
Say vibes are winning. Well, Davis Owens, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiff.
The golden age of musical theater now on display in one of the nation's most prestigious institutions. The Kennedy Center this month is bringing back to stage the 1965 American classic, The Sound of Music. NTD's Sam Wong spoke with VIP members at the red carpet premiere. Let's take a listen.
The Sound of Music is a show that everybody knows and loves. I watched it when I was a little girl, and so to have it here at America's Cultural Center at a time when there really is a spotlight on what we're doing here at the Kennedy Center is music to my ears.
I'm looking forward to the entire production. You know, it's important to our city, it's important to those who are theater goers, and we want to let people know outside of the city to come here to see The Sound of Music. So I can't wait to take it all in.
I have vivid memories of watching The Sound of Music with my children growing up, so I think reliving that through this production and what's supposed to be a great cast and great show should be fantastic. And it's also, you know, a really exciting night for a lot of people here in D.C. that are supporters of the arts.
Well, I had an uncle who was a director in theater for many, many years, and as a child, every summer I would go and spend time with him in Milwaukee, and they always did a summer musical. So I got to know all the words of all the songs, and I'm just hoping tonight I can control myself and not sing along because I don't have a singing voice. I'm hoping people will look at this opportunity that the Kennedy Center is having this show and bring either themselves, their children, their grandchildren to see this, because it really is a classic piece of theater that everybody should know.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.